Consider a normal website. It will typically be aligned on the center of the page. Bootstrap provides some useful classes to help us achieve this. Let's check it out. The most common layout is the fixed one. We have a fixed size in pixels and the content is center aligned. The markup is pretty simple. Just add the class container to the parent element, like this. We'll wrap this in a div with a class of container. All right, and the result, you can see for yourself. If we look in the inspector, we can see that the class of container has margins applied to the left and right, placing it in the center of the page. It also has a width of 1170 pixels. Now, depending on the viewport size, the container element will have various widths, but it will always be centered on the page. If you need a fluid layout, you need to use the container fluid class, very similar to the row fluid that we learned about in the previous lesson. So here's an example showing a typical two-column fluid layout. Change this to fluid and this one to fluid. You saw the difference. Now our layout has a bigger width, 1280 pixels, and has very little paddings to the right and left, and it's still centered on the page. A big plus to Bootstrap as a CSS framework is the fact that it's responsive. If you download Bootstrap from the home page, it will also give you a CSS file called Bootstrap Responsive CSS. Now, this will mostly affect the grid and layouts by setting different column widths based on the viewport size, by stacking elements instead of floating them, and resizing headings and text. So it's a pretty important part of the whole framework. In order to use these styles, you must include this CSS file in the head of your page, like this. I have a link with the href going to css/bootstrap responsive CSS. Also, notice the meta tag, this one. It's used for proper styling when you switch the view mode on a mobile device, for example, from portrait to landscape. If you're downloading a customized build of Bootstrap using the customizer, the responsive styles are already embedded in the final CSS, so you don't need to include any additional files. Bootstrap uses a handful of media queries to enable the responsive styles. And here we have the Bootstrap responsive CSS file. The way these media queries work is pretty straightforward. At different viewport sizes, given by min width, also by max width, you can use both, the layout and grid width values change. As you can see right here, we have, for example, all the spans, and they change width, the offset values, and the rows. If we scroll down, we'll find another media query. This one is for tablets, min width and max width, and the spans here have different values. Here's a table from the official documentation that will hopefully help you understand better. So for larger displays, we have a layout width of 1200 pixels and up, and different column widths. As we go down, the layout width gets smaller and so do the column width and gutter width. Finally, the last two breakpoints or media queries refer to phones and tablets with a width of 767 pixels and below. At this point, there is no more columns per se. They become fluid columns, and they will not float anymore. They will just be stacked instead of floated. Bootstrap also offers a series of responsive utility classes, which are basically classes that are available at different resolutions or viewport sizes. By using them, you can show or hide various parts of your layout, depending on the device it's being viewed on. Here's another table from Bootstrap containing these classes. You can see for each device, phone, tablet, and desktop, we have two classes, visible and hidden. So you can really use these, as I said, to show or hide different parts of your layout. For example, if we have a div with a class of visible phone, this will only be visible, or it will only be shown on the phones with a resolution or width of 767 pixel and below. On tablets and desktops, it will be hidden. So far, we looked at a major component in Bootstrap, the grid system. But there is so much more to learn about this amazing framework, and a good place to start is the base CSS. So coming up, we'll have a look at the typography styles.